The mid-afternoon sun did not warm. It only shone, cold, ruthless, over a cracked land that once was sea. There, between endless fissures and salt crystals crunching under boots, Dr. Halim's team moved silently. They weren't searching for glory, nor for gold. They were searching for bones. "What's that?" one young archaeologist whispered, pointing his lamp toward a crevice masked by a thick salt crust. Dr. Halim approached, gently scraped away the salt. A tunnel, sealed, perfectly fitted, carved with a precision that shouldn't exist 30,000 years ago. Hours later, the tunnel gave way. What they saw could not have been the work of primitive men. A vast chamber, dripping with white crystals hanging like spears from the ceiling. The floor carpeted in coarse salt dust. And arranged in orderly rows lay bodies. Human bodies. Not skeletons. Not mummies. They were intact. As if asleep. As if waiting. At the far end, a figure sat upright, clutching something in its hands. A carved bone, inscribed with tiny markings in a tongue forgotten before time. One of the students stepped forward, trembling, read aloud the only phrase clear among the engravings. "For memory, we offered ourselves to oblivion." Dr. Halim stepped back. Night's underground stretched into endless shadows. Not for lack of sun, there was none, but for the weight of silence. Akeem moved through the salt tunnels like a ghost. Each step echoed in the crystalline chambers where his people slept, worked, prayed, unaware of what he knew, unaware of what he was about to do. Deep in the purest white salt, the children lived, where the air was still fresh, where the cries of the elders did not reach. Asha, a small girl with wide eyes and a salt pendant around her neck, tugged gently on his cloak. "Why are you sad, Keeper?" she asked. "Have you forgotten the songs?" Akeem said nothing. He only stroked her head and walked away. He could carry no more memories. The upper tunnels were being sealed, with rocks and hardened resin from dry trees. A group of builders, chosen by Akeem himself, worked day and night. The official story, reinforcing the passages against collapse. No one suspected. No one questioned. The people trusted their keeper because Akeem was the one who knew, the one who remembered, the one who could not fail them. But he had already failed. Because there was no escape. Because salt's only protection was oblivion. In secret, Akeem selected the longest, smoothest bones from sacred animals. Ancient mammoths, white deer, nameless birds. With sharp flint tools, he wrote. Not history, confession. He carved his fear, his guilt, every sleepless night when the ground trembled with the invaders' footsteps. He carved his plan, to close every exit, to wait, to be silent. Because if found, they would be enslaved. Because if forced out, they would die without water. Because if salt claimed them, they would live forever, though no one could hear them. One by one, he sealed the passages. One by one, he extinguished the oil lamps. One by one, he delivered his people to stillness. When the last tunnel was sealed with resin, salt dust, and petrified song, Akeem stopped being keeper. He became witness. For days he did not speak, No one searched for him. Darkness grew. The air thickened. Breaths slowed. Voices faded. The people gathered in prayer halls. Some slept. Others sang the last salt hymns. Asha held her pendant tight, whispering to nothing. They did not know they were dying. They only felt the world had stopped. And Akeem, he wrote. He recorded the faces of children, the names of elders, the words of his mother from winters long past. Do not fear death if death remembers your name. When the last bodies ceased to move, when no voices remained, when even his shadow weighed heavier than himself, Akeem rose. He found the crack, the only opening left unsealed. Narrow, painful. It tore skin from his shoulders, opened wounds on his sides, but he escaped. Alone, covered in salt and blood, with a handful of bone tablets in his hands. When sunlight touched him for the first time in weeks, he did not cry. He did not scream. He knelt and buried the tablets, one by one. Thousands of years later, Dr. Halim held one of those tablets under the afternoon sun. Salt had preserved every letter, every stroke, and on that fragment, written on the curve of a pelvic bone, she read, "Who will be the first to hate me? And who will understand me?"
Dr. Halim's team spoke little, not since they began reading the fragments. Each word pulled a deeper silence around them, an echo, not of sound, but of guilt. The tablet they held now was one of the newest, carved with trembling, harsher strokes, as if Akeem had written while crying. Today I saw an old man die. I did not know him, but he knew me. He looked at me before falling, and in his eyes I saw not hatred, I saw understanding. Dr. Halim closed her eyes. A sudden wind made the salt underfoot crunch. These chambers were not mere tombs. They were libraries of bone. A whole civilization, willing to be forgotten so they could be remembered rightly. The next fragment was different. Not confession, chronicle. Akeem, trapped underground, wrote about his people, who they were beyond the tragedy. We called ourselves Shah-El, meaning those who shape silence. Not because we did not speak, but because silence was the original mold of the world. A child's birth was celebrated with a day of absolute silence. The elders said the newborns could still hear the voice of the ancient world, and any human word could break that sacred bond. These rituals were etched on the ribs of the first dead, spirals narrating how salt taught them to live in stillness. Our history was not sung, it was touched. Fingers on bones, on stone, on dry skin. Akeem root of the water bearers, a sacred caste guarding sealed vessels filled with the last drops of the Ural Sea. Water was not for drinking, it was for remembering. Each new moon, water was poured on altars. Small carved bones floated on its surface. What floated became history. What sank was forgotten. At the center stood the Hall of the Great Bone, a vast spiral chamber where the most important stories were carved into whole skeletons. Families of bone, not tombs, but books. Akeem grew up there, playing between shoulder blades and femurs, learning to read as naturally as breathing. How could I condemn them to this? Akeem carved. How could I use their faith to hide my fear? It was clear. He no longer wrote for the future. He wrote for himself to stay sane, Or maybe because he still hoped for redemption, if only someone would read. Back in the present, Halim's team descended deeper. They found a single figure sitting, covered in a thick, salt crust, like a shell. It looked like he died writing. Between his fingers, a final tablet, different from the others, larger, smoother, ceremonial, carved with the precision only known when it is the last time. At the top, one phrase: "Here the world stops, but not the story."
The salt crust cracked slowly, as if time itself resisted letting go of its final witness. Inside, the body was dry, fused with salt. Yet the eyes, though hollow, still seemed to look. He held a final tablet. Not like the others, this one was different. It didn't speak of the people, not of their rituals, not even of Akim himself. It spoke of what came before. We were many, Akim wrote. And then we were not. It was a memory long buried, a chapter their people had forbidden to tell. The exile of origin. A time when Sha'ul had lived above ground, among green hills and a living sea. A time when they spoke with other tribes, traded, traveled, laughed, until the storm of tongues. A war. Not for land, not for water, for memory. They wanted to rewrite, Akim carved. We only wanted to remember. The fire came. Sacred bones were burned, libraries reduced to ash. Their people hunted, not for power, but for what they knew. And so they fled, into the veins of salt beneath the earth, into silence, into secrecy. And they made a vow, never again to share what they remembered, only to preserve. We were not martyrs, Akim admitted. We were cowards with good memory. His words darkened. He wrote of nights where children wept fire in their dreams, of elders whispering dead languages into walls of salt, hoping the earth still listened. And for the first time, he spoke of himself, as if he no longer belonged to them. I sat among the dead, he wrote, and I understood I was not their guardian. I was their mistake. Then he mentioned Asha, the child, his last conversation with anyone. She had brought him a stone, white, tear-shaped. For you, guardian, she said softly, for when you no longer want to remember. He hadn't understood then, but he kept it, carved it, and hid it among the tablets. A single tear, petrified in a sea that no longer existed. One of the archaeologists found the stone, smooth, bright, unlike anything else, and beneath it, a tiny inscription. When you no longer wish to remember, you will still be here. Dr. Halim wept, not for Akim, not for his people, but for what they had built, a monument of eternity, paid with their own silence. That night, the team did not speak. They didn't plan publications or presentations. They simply sat and listened, because the walls of salt, though silent, still vibrated, still whispered, still remembered.
They remained underground for 3 more days. Not by obligation, but because no one could bear to leave. They cataloged every tablet, traced every engraving, but the work felt more like mourning than discovery. And then something unexpected happened. The youngest of the team, Soraya, barely 20, had wandered deeper into a chamber none had dared to enter. There, behind a curtain of salt stalactites, she found what appeared to be a collapsed tunnel. But as she brushed away the crusted layers, she screamed. Not from fear, from awe. The others ran, and when they saw it, they forgot to breathe. Hundreds of cablets, stacked like bones in a grave, but not carved, painted, in colors no one could explain. Pinks, violets, blues, pigments that shouldn't exist in a place without sunlight. Each painting depicted the same thing. A child, small, wrapped in furs, standing alone on a cliff of salt, arms outstretched toward a crack in the ceiling, toward light. It was Asha, but the final painting was different. It showed the child again, but older, her eyes glowing, salt trailing from her fingertips. She had become one with the cave, and memory incarnate. She didn't leave, Soraya whispered. She became the story. That night, the team gathered one last time. They held the tear-shaped stone at the chamber's center. Dr. Halim placed it gently back where it had been found. And together, in silence, they carved one final inscription beneath it. You remembered, so we are not lost. They sealed the chamber, not out of fear, but reverence. Because some stories are not meant to be translated, only honored. As they emerged from the cave, the sun was rising. The world above had not changed. Traffic still moved, phones still rang, the surface still rushed forward. But inside each of them, something ancient stirred, something patient, vast, and full of salt.